Birds sang softly. Everything felt peaceful. Everything except my mind. I sat down on an old wooden bench. For several minutes, I simply stared at the ground. Then I noticed someone else sitting at the other end of the bench, an elderly man. He wore an old brown jacket and held a small notebook in his hands. He wasn't writing. He was just watching the people around him. After a few minutes, he spoke. "Bad day?" I looked at him surprised. "Is it that obvious?" A small smile appeared on his face. "Only to someone who has lived through many bad days." His voice was calm, warm, comforting. For some reason, I didn't mind talking to him. "I lost my job today," I admitted. He nodded slowly. "And now," he said, "you think your life is falling apart." I looked at him. "Yes, it feels like everything is over." He closed his notebook. Then he looked directly into my eyes. "No," he said, "it's just beginning." I almost laughed. "Beginning? I just lost my only job. I don't have much money. I don't know what I'll do next." He listened carefully. Then he smiled again. "Good." I frowned. "Good? How can this possibly be good?" He leaned back against the bench. "Because now," he said slowly, "you have something many people never have." I waited. "You have the chance to choose a different life." I shook my head. "I don't feel lucky. I feel terrified." "Of course you do," he replied. "Fear is natural. It appears whenever we stand in front of something new." I looked away. "I don't even know what I'm good at." He stayed silent for a moment. Then he asked, "What have you been doing for the last 6 years?" "I organized work," I replied. "I answered emails. I solved small problems. I helped customers. I managed schedules." He smiled. "So you do know many things." "I guess," I replied, "but those are ordinary skills. There is nothing special about them." The old man laughed softly. "Do you know what the world needs most?" I shook my head. "People who can solve ordinary problems." His answer surprised me. He continued, "Most people spend their lives waiting. They wait until they feel ready. They wait until life becomes safe. They wait until someone gives them permission. And while they wait, they never begin." His words stayed in my mind. I had been waiting too, waiting for the perfect time, waiting until I had more money, waiting until I felt confident. Maybe I had been waiting for years. "What if I fail?" I asked quietly. He looked at the trees before answering. "What if you don't?" I stared at him. Nobody had ever asked me that question before. All day I had been asking myself, what if everything goes wrong? But I had never asked, what if something goes right? The sun slowly began to disappear behind the trees. The sky turned orange and pink. For the first time since morning, my breathing became slower. The fear was still there, but it wasn't as strong. The old man stood up. He placed his notebook inside his jacket. "So," I asked, "what should I do now?" He smiled one last time. "Take the next step." I looked confused. "That's all?" "Yes," he replied. "You don't need to see the whole road. You only need to see the next step." Then he turned around and slowly walked away. Within a minute, he disappeared behind the trees. I stayed on the bench for a long time, thinking. His advice sounded simple, maybe too simple, but somehow it made sense. That evening, I returned to my apartment carrying nothing but my small box from the office. The rooms felt quieter than ever before. I placed the box on the table and sat on the edge of my bed. Everything had changed. I had no job, no plan, no idea what tomorrow would bring. But deep inside me, a tiny voice whispered something new. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe this was the beginning. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same moments again. Mr. Reynolds telling me that my job was gone. My coworkers smiling without knowing it was my last day. The old man in the park, his calm voice echoed in my mind. You don't need to see the whole road. You only need to see the next step. I wanted to believe him, but it wasn't easy. Fear is loud. Hope is quiet. The next morning, I woke up at 7 o'clock out of habit. For a few seconds, everything felt normal. Then I remembered. I had nowhere to go, no office, no meetings, no work. The apartment felt strangely silent. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window. People outside were rushing to work, just like I used to do. For a moment, I felt jealous. They had a purpose. I felt lost. I picked up my phone and almost opened a job website. Then I stopped. The old man's words returned. Choose a different life. I walked to my desk and found an empty notebook. I opened the first page. For several minutes, I couldn't think of anything to write. Finally, I wrote one sentence. Things I can do. It looked simple, almost childish. Still, I kept writing. I can organize work. I can answer emails. I can communicate politely. I can solve small problems. I can help customers. I can stay calm under pressure. I can learn quickly. When I finished, I looked at the list.